introduce Dr. Claire Fowler. Claire has worked with many community mediation centers around the country to introduce Caseload Manager to them and to optimize Caseload Manager to make sure that they can get the most out of it. So she's got just this great perspective to share. Claire's going to kind of take the lion's share of the presentation today. I might chime in every now and then and make some translations from the system to DRCMS so that you're seeing the connections. But Claire's been nice enough to get up really early. She's in Pacific time. Claire, I'll pitch it over to you.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you guys as well for taking the time to get up and do this training the morning after 4th of July. I don't know about where you are. There's quite a bit of leftover smoke in the air over here, so I apologize if I sound like there's a frog in my throat. So let's go ahead and chime in. I'm going to just go over some basics today. One quick housekeeping basic is unless you're asking a question, and if you do want to ask a question, please, by all means, jump in and interrupt me whenever you want. But unless you're asking a question, it's probably a good idea to keep your audio muted, simply because we are recording this webinar, and you know, then it will prevent us from being distracted by all the barking dog and phone ringing kind of background noise. So that being said, I'm just going to go over some basic stuff today, and then my understanding is you'll be going over some more advanced trainings with your super user. So let's go ahead and get started here. Some of the basics that you already know: this is a program that's in the cloud, meaning that you can log in from anywhere, and so you should have access to your staff, your cases, your calendar, reports, etc. And you can customize it as well. You can customize it for your personal needs as well as for your office needs. So we'll go look at how to do that in just a moment. What we're doing today is the introduction stuff. We'll go over getting started and staff setup. Your super user has already done most of the configuration for your settings, adding custom fields, etc. And then some of the optimization and advanced features, those are optional features. And so it's up to your super user what you would like to add for your office. Some of it works really well for some offices, and some of it would just be kind of a distraction. So your super user will be deciding exactly what add-on features you want to be using, and then we'll be scheduling those trainings later on. All right, so ta-da, introduction. Many of you have already received your login information, and for the rest of you, you will be receiving it shortly. Notice that you have your own unique login ID. So if you were to visit our website at Caseload Manager, there is a place that says login. Instead, I would use this one that we're sending to you because it's a unique login just for the New York users. So as soon as you receive this, I would make sure to bookmark it somewhere so that it's easy just to click here in the future. Your user ID and password will be sent to you. Note that your user ID is your email address. Your password is a combo of at least 6 letters and numbers, and I will show you in just a moment how to make that your own. Right, so as soon as you've logged in, you'll see the Caseload Manager home screen, which is arranged in 5 hubs, which we see here. We have the calendar upper left, then activities, reports, and mail. Finally, at the bottom, there's the Cases hub, and this is where you'll be spending the majority of your time. So let me log out of here, and I'm going to head over to a live demo. And I'm clicking over. Click over faster. There we go. Okay. So we're looking at a live demo, and it's wonderful because it looks like Paula has already filled out quite a bit of information in here. So that's great. So the first thing I want to do is show you how to log into your own staff record and change your password. So again, we're pretending this is the very first time you've logged in. So what you want to do is come over here to Edit, drop down to Staff, and find your name. I'll just add a pretend volunteer for the moment. So I'll walk you through what a staff record would look like. So volunteer, we'll say this is a test volunteer. We always want to add initials because those initials will follow you through the system so that whenever you're adding a new calendar item or an activity, your initials will be next to it, which makes it easier for people to track back with you in case they have any questions. Email, oops, that worked. Now here's where you can update your password. Again, at least 6 characters, combination of letters and numbers. And again, you want this password to be pretty strong simply because there's a lot of important confidential information that you guys need to keep track of. And so it's wise just to protect the system and to protect your client's information to make this a pretty strong password. All right, now scrolling down. Note that there's quite a bit of information about you in here. So as this information changes, this is where you're going to log in and update it. So you get a new phone number, a new email address, you move. Note that this is also where you can change what apprenticeship phase you're in, unless your super user's doing that. Scrolling down, this is where you can set your languages, your county availability, etc. And finally, your day-to-day availability. Okay, so that's your basic staff record. Oops. Tried to save it without a field filled out. There we go. And success. Okay. So again, to get here, as soon as I logged in, I went to Edit, and then I dropped down to Staff. Okay. So now we're going to walk through starting a case. Now, again, you guys are the experts in your field, but from what I understand, there's a couple different types of cases that you work with. Some are the case managed cases that might have multiple mediations and phone calls, etc. What we're going to look at today is more of a small claims case, simply because it sounds like, well, it sounds like that would be better for demoing the system, and that's a little bit more of a concise, simple case to look at. So I'm going to click Add New Case. So I'm down here in the Cases Center, and over on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Add New Case. So now it has a couple of initial questions. Select process, we'll say it's a mediation. Case type, I'll select small claims and set. So now I'm in my case intake screen. We'll just start at the top here and work our way down. Okay, so top left, primary, it's going to assign a new number. Now, note that this is a case ID that our system is going to be automatically assigning to every case, and it will be a unique number. So if you have one person in one office adding a case and somebody else is adding a case from home, you don't have to worry about checking in with each other to make sure that you're not adding duplicate numbers. Caseload Manager will automatically assign that for you. If there's additional numbers that you need to add, though, let's say it's a court docket number that you need to assign, or let's say that there is there's a case name that you want to add, and this is just for keeping track of the case for your own office needs. This is where you would add that information. But for us, you know, for the Caseload Manager staff, just to know that you have a unique number, that's what we will be assigning up here with that primary number. Okay.
And Claire, just if I can quickly hop in, just so folks realize, in the past for both of these centers, you've been working out of multiple databases. And so you've only been able to see, unless you remote in, you've been only able to see the cases in your database. Now you'll be able to see all the cases for all your counties at one time. So even if you might work in Chautauqua County, you're still going to see the Niagara County cases and the Erie County cases. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can make that manageable, because that could be a lot of cases to see. But just know that, you open up a case in Jamestown, it's going to be case number 1. Case number 2 might be out in Batavia, and case number 3 could be in Buffalo. So there's no more 2-letter prefix at the beginning of cases that lets you know which kind of county or database it might be coming out of.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Again, everybody else, jump in if you have any questions. So scrolling down here, we'll select our referral source. Select the county. Identify the relationship. And now there are these additional pending fields, and Dan, please jump in if I'm misstating this, but it sounds like these are fields that are optional for your office. And if it's a feature that you use, so if you want to keep track of pending, return date, docket number, agreement writing, etc., then these fields are available to you. We've included them with all caseload managers because it sounds like it might be something that will be added in the future, that will be expected for people to be working on in the future. But for now, as far as I understand it, this is just optional, and you can use it if it's something that your office decides to do.
Right, exactly. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, so if you're used to using the pending and docket return date stuff, you can use it. The other 5 fields are kind of time tracking fields. And just so that Amber and Paula know, I did send it out briefly in the email that went out on Friday. There is a way to hide those fields if you want to hide them, but you need to talk with me if you want to do that. And that might make this a little less cluttered. So I'm just letting you know, but those are intended for future use.
Great. So I'm just going to keep going down here on the left-hand side. So here's where you can add basic information about your parties. Now, if it's somebody that you've worked with before, then their information will already be available here, and you can just select it. If it's somebody new, then you can add their information, as well as any basic information you have about them at the time. We will be needing to add demographic information. And so I'll show you in a moment how to do that. Okay, so we've added our basic information about our parties. And I want you to notice that right now there's only a space to add information for 2 parties, the initiating and the responding. Don't worry, as soon as I save this case, blank spaces will begin to pop up so that you can add as many additional parties and participants as you want to. Okay, so what we've done so far is the very basic case intake information. We've added information about our parties. So now we scroll down, and now we can add staff information. So for staff, as soon as I assign a volunteer, so I'm going to assign this test volunteer to this case, then what that means is if I have chosen to give my volunteer mediators access to this system, then they will now see this case. If I do not assign them to this case, this is the default. You guys can change this setup as much as you like, but the default is that if I don't add them to this case, the volunteer would have no idea that this case or these participants even exist. It won't show up anywhere on their calendar, activities. They won't see it in their case list. But as soon as I click add, then they will now see this case and all the information about it as soon as they log in. What they can do with that case is up to you. Some people want them to just be able to see the information, maybe know what time they're supposed to be at a mediation. Other people want to give them full access. So they want their mediators to be able to edit parties' information or make quick notes about how a session went. That is completely up to your office, and I am happy to talk through some of the different setups with you and your super users. Okay, so I've just added a volunteer to a case, and I'm also going to assign a case developer. So we'll add you, Paula. Okay, so I've added the basic staff information on the left. Hopping up to the upper right, here's where I can make basic notes about a case. Again, it sounds like for a small claims case, you probably wouldn't need to do this, but bear with me. I just want to show you where the different fields are. Say this is a course case, and okay, coming down to the status. Oh, fantastic. You guys have filled out a lot of good options here. So mainly for status and for quite a few of these other fields, you can keep the fields that make sense for your office. So the options that you would use, add in all the additional options you need, and then get rid of everything else. And so it looks like Paula has already done that. So I will click on close case. Waiting for, so again, probably not for a small claims case, but for a longer case managed case, this is a great way to indicate what needs to happen next for a case to move forward. So perhaps firm with party, oops, like to mediate, something like that. All right, types. So it brought in the small claims information. Nature, communication. Outcome, full agreement. Process, mediation. Secondary nature, if you use this, I don't know, behavior issue. NYC criminal code, I'm not sure if this is one that your office needs.
Just I'll quickly chime in while you're doing this, Claire, is just so folks know a few changes here. So one is the New York City Criminal Code is only for New York City programs. It's really critical for them, but it's showing up here. You don't have to do anything with that. I do want to point out that the list of case types has mostly stayed the same. We have made a couple modest changes to it. So you don't have ag credit and ag non-credit anymore. We'll explain that in a moment, how you want to handle that. And peer mediation is no longer a case type. I don't know if that affects either of you. I don't think it does. We have new processes. If you can click on that, Claire, for a quick moment. What you'll notice with process is that we have restorative practices, settlement conferences, peer mediation is now a process. We also have fair hearings and conflict coaching. So there are more choices on the process side with their corresponding outcomes. All of that is going to be defined in a future release of the program manual that we're aiming to get out pretty soon here in July.
Great.
Those are the only changes, and then you'll see as you kind of work on down, Claire will show you the NICEAMP button for indicating that.
Yeah, I'll show you right now. So there's the NICEAMP button to indicate credit or non-credit. And I want to hop back up to these individual served buttons. So let's say in this instance, there were 5 individuals served and 3 of those were children. And this was small claims, so I want to make sure to indicate that the amount agreed to in the award, we'll say $275. Referred to other services. We'll go here. And if it was screened inappropriate, here's where you can indicate the reason. Number of sessions, we'll say we had 1 session that was 45 minutes long. Okay, so I've done.
Hey, Claire.
Yeah.
Can we just confirm just a nuance, something different from our last system? Individuals and children served, is that a manual entry, or
Right.
so we have to manually enter that?
Mm-hmm.
So let me just make sure that I'm understanding what you're asking, Amber. So individual served is the same field that you had last time. So for a custody visitation case, individual served equals the number of, let's say, parents or family members there, plus the minor children that are affected by it. All right, so that's the children served is just a subset of that. That's optional to track if you want to. Does that answer your question?
It does. I was just wondering if it would pre-populate based on the parties that we were adding into the contacts.
No, it does not it doesn't auto-calculate that.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I've done all my intake stuff. So I'm going to click Add Case. And now I will go back in and add some more information about that case. So now I've moved past the intake screen and I'm in the actual working with the case record screen. And so there are a few changes here. As I mentioned, you can now add a third party if you'd like. Again, you can add as many parties as you want. Also, notice on the right-hand side that it's going to keep track of our case information, mainly the time and money that's going on. I think the time is the most interesting, just to see how much time different cases take. Just above that is where this is something you'll go over your super user, but in case they have you adding activities or calendar items from this screen, this is where you'll be doing that. And just above that is where you can upload documents. So perhaps you want to add in a copy of the confidentiality agreement or surveys, or if there's just something that's really important to keep track of in this case, perhaps it's a parenting schedule, then this is where you would upload that information and you can just archive it here, or you can use this as a way to email that information to a co-mediator or to another party. So there you go. All right. Okay, so now we've done our basic case intake. And so now, before we close out the case, I want to make sure that we've added some of the demographic information for our participant. So I'm going to click on John Doe. And we have his basic information from here, his address and his email that I added earlier. And now going down, you can see this is where I need to add his demographic information. Salutation, we'll say Reverend, locality, date of birth. Now my understanding is the most important is that you add the year, and you can just indicate January 1st for the actual month and date. Race, so note you have the different race options. You can put did not ask if you did not ask, and note that there's also this declined to respond option. Same with sex, education, employment, and household income. All right. And so most of that should look familiar. There's one additional thing at the bottom of the screen here I want to point out. So at the bottom is where you can see all of the cases that this participant is associated with. And so it's nice, again, let's say it's a frequent flyer. It's somebody that you work with all the time. And perhaps you want to see the other types of cases that this person has been involved in, or if that case is closed or not, or just what their history has been like with your office. And so from here, you can see a quick list and status of those cases, And then if you want to click in to get additional information, you can just click on this hyperlink here, and it will take you into those other cases. Okay, so I've added all this other information. Now make sure you hit update. Cases, the record is updated. There we go. The screen has now refreshed, which is wonderful. So anybody else who is working on this case will now have that information updated for them as well. So that's, yay, that's why we like the cloud, instant access to new information. Okay, so now I have done everything that I need to for this case. So now I'm going to go ahead and close it. To do that, I'll click on the date, and now I'm going to change these toggle buttons. See up here on the upper left, it says case open, and I can toggle it to say case closed. So now let's pretend that I forgot to fill out a field, okay? One of the required fields. So that field is blank, and I go to update the case indicating it's closed, and it says, oh no, it cannot be closed until you fill out individual served. All right, so I click back, come down to the individual served field, fill that out, and now I'll try to update again, and it says, yay, the case is now updated. All right, so I'll hit close. Okay, so now we're back on the home screen, and I can see that that case is appearing on my case list. So now unless you have any questions about adding or closing a case, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about case display and customization there. Does that sound good, or do you have any questions before I go on? Everything good? Okay. All right, we'll jump in if you want. So the first thing with case display is I want to point out this display at the very top. Okay, so I'm logged in at the moment as Paula, meaning I can see Paula's cases. Note that Paula is an admin, so she also has access to see everything. Ta-da! So all staff, all rooms. So Paula would be able to see all of the cases that were going on, that were added to the system. She can see everything on the calendar and all the activities. A volunteer, however, when they log in, they're only able to see, as I mentioned, their cases and things on their calendar. So this is kind of nice because as Dan mentioned, sometimes you want to see everything. You need to be able to see all of the counties, all the cases, everything that's going on. But for most of the time, you probably just want to see the information that's relevant for you. So then you can change your display to only see, again, your cases, your activities, okay? So we did that at the top here with this display dropdown. So that's one way to customize and optimize your display, but let's look at a couple of others. So now I'm going to drop down here to the Cases hub, and I'm going to look at these buttons on the far right, okay? Oops. So we already looked at Add New Case, and now I'm going to look at Filter and Select Fields. So with Filter, I'm going to change what cases I'm looking at. All right, so I'll click at Filter, and at the moment it says Display All Cases. Typically, right now we're demoing, so we want to see everything, but typically I will change this to Open Cases. It helps the system to run faster, but mostly it just streamlines the information for me so that when I'm looking at my screen, I'm only seeing the cases that I care about. If I ever had to get information on an archived or a closed case, then I could pop down here and click on Closed or have it display all. But most of the time, once a case is closed, I don't need to be working on it anymore. So that's why I would just change this to only say Open. If you wanted to look at cases within a certain date range, let's say you're running a quarterly report, then you would probably want to just show cases that were opened or closed during that time frame. let's say a participant called and they didn't know their case number, but they could tell you that, that it was Stephen Even. Okay, then you could enter that person's last name and all the cases that they're involved in would pop up. We have some great additional filtering options. You can filter by a specific referral source. If you use deadlines, here's how you would add that filter. If you wanted to look at all of the cases that were, I don't know, that were conflict coaching, here's how you could select that. All right. So you have a variety of different filtering options coming down here. Okay, so we set our filters updated, and now that will change the cases that are showing up here in the cases center. Okay, so it will change the cases that are in this list. So that's another way to customize it. Now let's look at the final way. So again, we just keep drilling down here and getting into more details, I guess. So the final way that I'm going to customize it is with this Select Fields button. So the fields that we're selecting are the ones that are appearing right here. So those are those headers: ID, open, closed, status, waiting for, case developer, etc. Okay. So I want to select what fields are displaying because this is like my dashboard. So I want to have the correct fields here that I think are the most important. Okay. So I'm going to click Select Fields. And this is different for everyone. Some people really want to see, I don't know, some people might be working with parties a lot. And so for them, they want to have the party's contact information and maybe any notes about those parties readily available. If you're not working with parties at the moment or you're not reaching out to them, you might want to deselect all of those fields. I'm going to deselect open or closed, and the reason why is that the cases themselves are a different color. So closed cases are kind of this grayish green color. Open cases are just plain white. So I can just tell by looking at the color whether or not a case is open or closed. So that's why I don't check this one. Anything else? I like having status checked. I like having waiting for checked. The case developer, that can be useful. So if you have any questions, you know who to reach out to. The case type, and then I also like having notes included. Okay, so that's, again, come through here, just take a little bit of time to personalize it so that you have the right information that you want immediately at your fingertips. Okay, so click close. Again, it instantly updates. And so now it's changed these fields, right? So now I'm just looking at the fields that are most interesting to me. All right, so again, what we just looked at was how to customize your screen. So I began by changing the display so that I'm only seeing my information. Then I hit filter so that I'm only seeing cases within the time frame that I'm working on, or I'm only looking at open cases. And then I selected the fields that I wanted to work with. Okay, does that make sense? So again, we're just trying to make this as friendly for you as possible. Again, I know it's pretty different, so thank you everybody for being so patient and flexible during this transition, but we're just trying to work on making this a good program for you. All right, so unless anybody has any questions, I'm going, go ahead. I hear you chiming in.
So, yeah, thanks, Claire. So for people who are accustomed to relying on your next action report and the next action function in DRCMS to help you organize your work, you may end up using this case dashboard for that exact purpose because it is customizable and you can add things like status and things like that to it, so that you know kind of like what the next steps are for all the cases that you're assigned to. But check with your super user because there are several other ways to do that, and they may they're kind of developing what they think is going to work best for you all.
Great. Okay. So now I was going to hop up into the edit staff section. Okay. So this is up here, edit. We drop down to staff. And so this is where we went earlier to change your own staff record. For the moment, I'm going to be using this for our mediator panel. So to do that, I'm going to filter. And let's say that I just want to look at, I could say I just want to look at staff with no open cases, meaning, hey, who's available, who's waiting, who wants to have a case assigned to them. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I know that there's a John Smith guy and he's been wanting a case for a while. Okay, so I could type in a name. For right now, I'm just going to limit it to my volunteers, all right? Because I want to see all of the case or all of my volunteers. If I wanted to, I could also filter these by language, by county, etc. So if I need somebody that, I don't know, speaks Cantonese, then it would be easy for me to make that change here. Okay, so I've applied my filter. I'm going back so we can see that now I'm only looking at my volunteers. All right. And so I'm going to do the same thing that I did down in the Cases Center. I added my filter, and now I want to select what fields I'm seeing. Okay, so you see that little button right here, select fields. So I'll click that. And now I get to decide what information I want. Okay, so type, name, initials, email, phone, that's all great, easy to access them. Notes, I think that's important. Confidential staff notes, that means that when they log in, they won't be able to see those notes, okay? Because most of your volunteers probably won't have access to that. So this is where admins can make notes about their staff members if they want to. Like this person is great at handling divorce mediations, but they need a little bit more experience with foreclosure, something like that. All right, and then finally, latest case. I think this one's really useful so that you can see who has been really busy lately and who has not mediated in a while. Again, we have other options here, so you can just select what fields are most important for you. So I hit update and go back. So now I've got the roster that I want of all of my mediators with all of the fields that I want for being able to work with them. Okay? Is this making sense? Is this? So hopefully I'm showing you some features that will be useful for you. All right. So closing out of staff.
Actually, Claire, I'm sorry. Can we go into that record then for the staff?
Yes.
So I just want to give folks a little preview of what's in here, which is kind of cool. Not only for every volunteer will you be able to use this system on the left-hand side, as Claire kind of scrolls down here to track, the contact information. But we found that a lot of people weren't using the mediator module in DRCMS very much to do their volunteer tracking. And we tried to build this capacity into Caseload Manager so that you can track their certifications, for instance, when they completed their mediation trainings, where they are in their apprenticeship phase. And then just as you kind of scroll down, kind of some of the characteristics, what counties they're available in, what languages they speak, whether they have other licenses or things like that. So we tried to put that capacity. The other thing that we can do on the right side of the screen at the top of the record is you'll be able to track, like you can see under associated cases, you'll be able to see every case that the person's been connected to in your system, and it's a hot link, so you can click on the case and then open up the information about the case. There is also the capacity to track in-service trainings, so you'll be able to see that. Other volunteer activities, so if they came in and answered phones or entered cases into the system or whatever they did to help you, you can track that here as well. And then any email that you connect with, send to them through this system will also be archived on their record. So we're trying to kind of build some real, straightforward and basic volunteer tracking information into the system, and we're hopeful that that makes your work with them easier.
Great, thank you. Okay. So what we did was, we're assuming that you've logged in, you have edited your personal information, you've added a case, let's say from start to finish, so you've also needed to close out a case, and you've customized your display. So let's say that you're doing all of that and then you have a question. So your first go-to can be up here, just underneath your name. There's this help button, okay? So I click help and it pops me out to the help center. So most of the topics you have questions for should be available on this list, okay? So help topics, getting started, settings menu, calendar. Again, a lot of this will depend on how your office does things, but depending on what features you use, then I don't know, let's say your office decides to use email templates, okay? Then you'll have detailed instructions here about how to create email templates. All right, let's hop back. So again, most of your questions should be here in your help topics list, but let's say you have a New York specific question, such as how does a certain field interact with a certain report, okay? So then those types of questions will be down here in this little New York link. So we've kind of tried to hide that, but when you're on the home screen to find your New York specific support page, just come down here to the lower left, click on New York. And so we're going to keep fleshing this page out. I'll be adding a bunch of the recordings that we're doing right now. So this webinar we're recording, and then we will be adding that to the screen so that as you get new staff, instead of taking the time to train them, you can tell them to first watch the webinar to make sure that they're getting all the same information that you had. Quick start, that will help new staff members and new volunteers to know exactly how to get started. Complete instructions, that's the complete manual from A to Z, and that goes over all of the advanced features. So that's more for an admin or an upper level staff. And then questions, these will be frequently asked questions. Again, things like what fields do we need to work on to make sure that we're filling out the reports correctly, okay? So those are, this is just for your specific New York page, and as new webinars are added and new reports are added, we're just going to continue to update this page. All right, so I mentioned that's your first line of defense. When you have questions, I would hop out to the help center to see if you can quickly figure it out. If not, of course, go to your super user, and then if your super user has any questions, then they can contact me and we'll work through the question together and possibly schedule another training for your office if that's helpful. So yeah, so that's the main stuff that I wanted to go over. Again, if anybody has any questions, please chime in, but that's everything I wanted to cover this morning. I'm hearing a little bit of movement. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions or any reactions? Anything that's causing confusion or that you're interested in hearing a little bit more about? We have about 10 more minutes, so we might as well let your interest kind of guide how we spend the next few minutes.
No. Okay. So I don't want to go over too much more. Again, because it sort of depends on how your super user would like to set up workflow for your staff.
So Amber and Paula, is there anything else that you'd like us to just touch on? Is there anything that would be helpful? Pardon?
Anything else you want to touch on?
I think we're okay, Dan, here, unless anyone else in my room. Do you guys have anything for Dan you want to, or Claire? No. I think we're good from this end.
Great.
Awesome. Okay. Paula, how about on your end? Anything you want us to touch on?
No, I think we're good, Dan.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I'll say this group, you all are in such great hands with Amber and with Paula, and I've got great confidence and also a lot of curiosity in how you end up using the system. So I'm sure I'll be reaching back to you all. We know this is a huge change, and we are just appreciative with everyone kind of taking the time to make the adjustment. It's going to impact the way you do things and you see things, and hopefully what we find is that amount of time that you take into the transition is going to pay off in the end in terms of efficiency and that sort of thing. So I'm wishing you all a great spirit of discovery as you see new stuff, and that outweighs any frustration that the change is causing for you. So many thanks to everyone, and please, Paula, Amber, keep me posted if anything comes up as you are implementing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye, thank you, Dan. Bye.
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 Take
Thank
care.
you. Have a good day.
Bye.